So hi to all guys. Today I'm going to speak about a short brief story of Kramer guitars. Okay, I own one of these from the 80s. Okay, it's not this is not one of the newest one built and made by Gibson. That I think they are even quite nice. And okay, I wanted to share with you my opinion regarding the Kramers of the 80s and speaking about a little bit of what I know of Kramer story. Okay, because probably I mean I was a punk kid back then in the end of the 80s, so I saw clear what Kramer was for guitarists and hard rock people like me, and because a lot of time passes and young guys, young guitarists, maybe they don't know the real importance and the real how can I say, being famous that Kramer was back then, because now we well known brands like Charvel that are great that they made great guitars, like for example ESP that has some strong connection with Kramers, like now I don't remember all the brands, but the most famous were ESP, Jackson, and Charvel and Kramer back then. Speaking of hard rock access, oh, clear, and but Kramer was forgotten because they had a bank corrupt back in 1991, I think, and but Kramer before this and before some wrong choice they made in their production lines and their models, they were really famous, and more than Charvel or Jacksons that were already famous back then, but Kramer was more up, and we can say that Kramer wasn't only about Van Halen, that he was he was playing Kramer from 1983 till 1990, I think, and but I have to say that my personal thinking is that but is even the truth, that Kramer were building real nice guitars of high end level, not for example like some Fender Stratocasters back then that were built really poorly back then, not then after. And Jackson were good, Charvel were good, but not at same level of Kramer. Kramer, I think, was found around the middle of 1970s, and they started to make some guitars. They became famous in the early 80s by producing some Kramer guitars for the hard rock incoming glam metal time in the 80s, and they became fast famous because they were the first to had the original Floyd Rose system. Okay, and they went in a airplane meeting. Is This is what the story is saying, with Edward Van Halen, and when they told him they had this Floyd Rose system that was better of the one he was using, that was I don't remember now which bridge system Van Halen was using before, but there was this collaboration between Kramer and Edward Van Halen for the Floyd Rose system first. And Van Halen embraced Kramer because of the Floyd Rose system, and they started this collaboration. If I well remember, in 1983, because the first Kramer I saw him playing live was during the 1983 tour in South American tour. I saw a lot of video where he has the Kramer already, and probably even in the famous US festival he has a Kramer neck in the Frankenstrat body, but I don't remember now well it. So they started this collaboration, and Edward Van Halen was really happy of this Floyd Rose system. That in beginning, the first Floyd Rose system that Kramer was mounting or creating was without the fine tuners, and Edward Van Halen told Kramer and Floyd Rose to mount these fine tuners for don't let the guitar being closed, and you could not tune it without opening here in the headstock the string keepers and changing the tune. So there was this collaboration, and Van Halen came out with with those Kramer that were built by Kramer for him during the 1984 tour and the 51-50 tour. Because before Van Halen was using the famous Frankenstrat guitar that was a mix of pieces, and Kramer back then made for him those striped Kramer guitars that you can see even in the live without a net video, for example. And those Kramer were fantastic. I think they were I can say, the holy grail of the Kramer, even for Kramer itself. And because at the time Van Halen was the most famous guitarist around the world, hard rock guitarist around the world, Kramer was selling really a lot of guitars, and a lot of other artists, famous ones, embraced the Kramer guitars. For example, I can say Vivian Campbell of Dio, and then I don't remember now, Whitesnake. When Vivian Campbell was playing in Whitesnake, he was embracing the Kramer with the night show shown model that was a famous one with the headstock, with the reversed headstock. I wanted to play a little bit of. I want to play this guitar a little bit because I'm seeing myself through the video, and I like how the guitar looks. So it's quite nice looking. So I have this feeling that I want to play it. Sorry. Sorry if I'm stopping a little bit the video session. Okay, so I was speaking about Vivian Campbell, Then there was even Nick Mars of Motley Crue, and then in the beginning even George Lynch of Dokken. Then he went with ESP, but I will explain why. So Kramer had a lot of requests back then, and the catalog was quite not clear. It wasn't at the standard catalog that you can find in Fender. There was a lot of mixed guitars and colors and things like this. For example, my Kramer here was a custom order made by a guitarist in Italy, and he bought like this. He ordered like this in a two-tone sunburst with the JB on the neck, as many of those Kramers back then. I only changed, for example, the pick guard, okay, because I broke the original one, and I removed the switch toggle from here that was splitting the humbucker within the middle single coil here. And I didn't like it because I was always with my little finger pushing it, and I was even scratching my finger. So I did not like it, and I took away. And so Kramer was making really a lot of models, and even in the production line they were making a lot of artistic things. And at one point they started to produce the guitar not in USA, but I mean, I have to explain it clear. They were ESP in Japan were building the necks and the bodies of the Kramers, and those bodies and necks were mounted then in Kramer USA in New Jersey. So they were American from one side because they were mounted there with a good quality, but the body and the necks weren't anymore built and created in USA, but by ESP in Japan, that back then was already a really good brand. It wasn't for sure like I make an example, Fernandez or similars. And I don't say this was the first mistake they did, because the production of those guitars that they started to do this in 1987, in the late 1987. This Kramer is still built and in USA, okay, but I think it was one of the last. But someone told that when Kramer started to make the big like this, they were building those guitars, those necks in ESP in Japan. But I don't. That does not change the fact that this is the one I have here is a really great guitar. But then they started to produce some guitars and mounting the guitars even in Japan. And those were the Focus ones that were still nice, but with cheaper Floyd Rose, still the original one, but the quality wasn't the same as the American ones or the one that were built bodies and necks in Japan and then mounted in USA. The quality was fine, but not as the first Kramers, because Kramers back then, I mean, I remember when I was a kid that if you had a Kramer, you were like people were like surprised because you were getting really a high-end guitar that was even costing quite much. I don't know, with the exchange rate of currency of now, a Kramer would cost like a Shure, okay, now, so around €3,000 for sure, even more probably. And There were, and they had the original Floyd Rose that you couldn't find in the Charvel, in the Jacksons, and so on. They had their own licensed Floyd Rose, but it wasn't good as those ones. And back then they started even to build some Kramer in Korea. Like I think I don't remember now the brands, but I think the strikers were built. I don't remember if in Japan or Korea. So please correct me if I'm saying it wrongly, because I don't remember now. And then they spend a lot of money in marketing, advertising, and they lost an important battle with Floyd Rose because of the bridge in 1990, I think, and they lost a lot of money because of those two things. Then the grunge music surfaced, and they were already in a difficult in the early 90s, and people started to don't buy any more Kramers, and started to prefer guitars like Fender Mustangs, Fenders that were used by, for example, Nirvana, okay, those kind of guitars, those guitars with the beak like this, with the hard rock style, with the Seymour Duncans, with the Floyd Rose system, were not anymore what the kids were searching for. So they fast went in bank corrupt, and they closed the factory, really in a fast time. I read somewhere that back then there was, with the remaining necks and bodies they have in the Kramer factories in United States, there was a fire sale, and people and other brands and other private even people bought a lot of those pieces for really a bunch or few dollars, really for nothing, and they build some guitars even in the production line. But lately, in the middle of the 90s, I think, and so there was the fire sale that even ESP, I think, if I read good, I don't remember now, but correct me, they bought some pieces from Kramer, and they mounted in their ESP guitars, if I well remember. But here I can be wrong. And so Kramer disappeared from the world. I remember back then in the 90s, I made my most live gigs, mostly there, and I remember me with my friend with those nice Fender Telecasters, Fender Stratos, the Jaguar ones, the Gibsons. They were guitars that people were kids were watching at, and me, I had always my Kramer. And I was one on a million to play live gigs with a Kramer. So I mean, I was an hard fan, and I am a hard fan of Kramer guitars. So while my friends were playing, we can say I was engaged from few bands for playing. For example, back then, solo tracks, and playing and being the soloist guitarist in the bands, because with this Kramer I could easily, play the pentatonics that were needed for the cover I was making, for example, of Jimi Hendrix and so on. So I had a really a nice time with my friends, and when I was playing live, I always had this one. I had even some Fenders, some and so on, but I played always with this one because it was really strong live. Okay, this guitar was really keeping the live session strong, and it was okay. So Kramer, it was really a pity, and I felt really sad back then because I remember around 2000 or even no, around 2000 I was in a local big guitar shop, and there was all those Ibanez, those Charvels, those Fenders, and so on. And I went to make a walk in the used corners, okay? And I saw through hidden Kramer, a Pacer Deluxe like this, not the same color. I don't remember the color now, and it was there thrown in an angle in this guitar stand, and it was sold for 250 euros. And my heart was oh my god, how can a brand like Kramer end like this in an angle hidden of a big guitar shop, because I'm speaking of a really big guitar shop with 100 guitars inside almost. And when I saw that Kramer, I thought, my god, I told myself, my god, why Kramer ended like this? They were the biggest, and became now the lowest. So when I started to see that Gibson bought Kramer, but they bought Kramer back in 1995, I think already. But the first Kramer I saw made by Gibson were almost 15 years later. Now I don't remember when exactly. I was so happy. Okay, they were made in Korea. They were made not in USA or okay, but I saw that Kramer was coming back. Now Kramer came back is not for sure the best brand, the most famous, the best one even in electronics and wooden necks, because Kramer now is mostly, I don't say a cheap guitar, but a middle guitar quality. And I saw when I saw this, I was really happy for Kramer because I think that Gibson is producing now quite good Kramer when you spend a little bit more. But I spoke with some friends I have that they own cheaper Kramer, like the Focus ones they made now, and they told me that despite to the price, 300 euro, we are speaking of maximum of 500 euros. The guitars are really playing good, and I'm happy that they came back. They will be not as in the 80s, but I'm seeing that a lot of kids now like those guitars, so from Charvel, ESP, Ibanez, and Kramers, and I'm happy of this. I saw that even in a reverb you start to see those 80s Kramers for really you can buy them for a high price. For example, the Kramer Barretta that is a final is in ends the Van Halen one, but with no stripes. Now I saw in a reverb some pieces around 4,000 euros. Okay, is even too much, but I remember 20 years ago I saw the same guitars on eBay or in local markets here, or guitar shop for 250 euros. So Okay, I'm happy those Kramers become vintage because they deserve, not for the price, but because Kramer were really an important part of the hard rock music story of the 80s and even the beginning of the 90s. They were really an important part, and I didn't like they could be forgotten so fast. So I'm happy that now Kramer came up in a nicer way, not like the glorious 80s years, but in a nice way. Okay, so this is the video I shoot today. Please, if you like the video, put a like, of course, and subscribe to my channel. And thanks a lot for watching. If you arrived till the end of the video, you are really a brave guitarist and person. So thanks a lot again, and keep on rocking.